So as we mentioned, you can have network traffic analysis that's actually an attack. And what we want to talk about is how do we prevent that? Or if it's happening, how do we remediate it? So one of the things that we can look at is disabling certain ports and services. For example, the ping port. And what the ping port disabling does for us is now when somebody wants to flood our network with traffic, one of the typical ways they do it is by pinging other computers on the network or just the public facing addresses on a particular network if they're attacking completely from the outside and not from a position of a compromised server inside the network. And getting rid of some of the typical services which can create a high volume of traffic without a lot of effort, without a lot of payload, like ping, lets us prevent abuse of the service. Or even if we have it on by default, well, we need to have abilities around turning that off quickly. We also want to make sure that servers that by default might come with Apache or some other web servers that start up when a server boots up, that either those are always patched and updated and secured if we want them to be on, or that these default services which listen on port 80 or port 8080, any of the typical FTP services that we might not have secured, that we intentionally either keep them protected or we turn them off so we don't provide an extra surface area for an attacker to flood our network with traffic and to deny service to the legitimate members of the network. And then there's also, of course, firewalling. And firewalling means restricting who is able to connect where, whether that's an external firewall, which is where suppose your company has a data center or cloud, and you only allow traffic from the outside into that network on a very specific set of IPs and a very specific range of ports, and that's where you focus your protection as well. Or it could be between even different segments of your network inside. Suppose if you have a more sensitive area that deals with payment information, you would have that firewalled off from the rest of your data center, especially suppose you have some segment of your network where there's more experimentation or laboratory kind of work going on. You would have that be less restricted, where people can bring up and bring down different services really rapidly, and so different IPs get assigned dynamically and different ports need to be open for trying things out. But then suppose you have personal data of users, you keep it separate and keep it protected. And the other thing is keeping traffic encrypted. So this way it's harder to have a compromised third-party agent be installed somewhere on the network and have it be able to analyze all the traffic going through and look at the contents of the data and steal data or use it to plan an attack. If your encryption is point-to-point and your encryption keys are not compromised, you are now denying the attacker one avenue of attack.